months after the Great Flood of 2016 left thousands of families without homes, one of those families is being put out again, this time because of fast-growing mold in their FEMA housing unit. But when they couldn't get any help, they called North Shore Bureau Chief Ashley Rodrigue.
So we made this little garden.
It's taken a little time for the Nunezes to settle into these 2 FEMA housing units as temporary homes after getting 4 feet of water in the Independence property in August. But Wendy Nunez says since Sunday, her family has felt victimized again.
I noticed mold on a bowl on the counter, and I was like, what? And I got to looking, and there was mold all over all the dishes. And I started looking around, and the more I looked, the more I found.
It was on doors, walls and ceilings, furniture, electronics, and clothing. Most alarming was finding it on mattresses and pillows once the sheets were pulled back. She says it's gotten worse every day, and FEMA has been of little help.
Monday, I had 4 different people from FEMA here. They looked around. Nobody took any samples of what kind of mold we're dealing with. One gentleman told me, well, you can go ahead and clean it up.
Nunez says follow-up calls with FEMA resulted in conflicting responses, including being told to sleep on the floor of the unaffected trailer against the agency's own occupancy policies. That's when Nunez called Eyewitness News, and by midday Wednesday, a FEMA team was back on site.
Their tone has changed completely. They're now talking about an 18-hour turnaround on the trailer, having all of our personal possessions professionally cleaned, finally providing us with a hotel room.
Apparently Monday overnight it got vastly worse. So she got some instructions by phone from us that were, valid for what we saw Monday, but I think what's going on is that it was much worse by then.
Though FEMA has shown up today, Nunez says it shouldn't have taken all of the effort on her part to get them here.
When there are problems, step up and take care of it. Step up and take care of it without a lot of hassle, without a lot of frustration, without a lot of tears.
FEMA says that remains its goal.
We want every applicant or survivor to get everything that they have coming and as quickly as possible. That's always what we're trying to do.
Ashley Rodrigue, Eyewitness News.
Wildfires aren't the only extreme weather we deal with in New Jersey. This week marked the official start of hurricane season. Climate change is making storms more intense and more frequent in our region, making it more likely that New Jerseyans will experience flooding or water damage in their homes. And when the water goes away, mold often follows. In our latest collaboration with Climate Central, Brenda Flanagan reports on the problems molds can cause for storm survivors.
Even though I have a full-time job, but I'm so overwhelmed.
Charlene Dionio still struggling to pay the $20,000 it took to clean up after Hurricane Ida flooded her basement in Dumont, leaving behind black mold on her carpets and walls. Ida swamped New Jersey, killing 29 people and causing $2 billion in damage. Thousands of homes sat festering in the heat with mold spreading.
I opened the closet. There's like black spots going up, and I said, oh my gosh.
Dionio says she spent frantic months trying to hire a contractor. Meanwhile, her dad, who lives with her, found himself fighting for breath.
He will be breathing and he will be hacking, and I have to give him nebulizers, and that goes on. So I said, oh my gosh, this mold is really affecting him.
Her dad ended up hospitalized. She says that helped convince her contractor to finally rip out the reeking carpets and walls. Another family in Bridgewater tells a similar tale of Ida flooding and mold test kits showing fungus growing in their home. But Alyssa Geibel says she didn't even have to see it.
Plus, you could smell it in the air. Like, it smelled totally different than the upstairs. Could totally smell the mold in the basement. So I'm like, okay, we need something. Let's put on masks to go down there.
So you have heat, mold, and a food source.
Mold expert Mike Van Dyke considers it a growing problem that impacts living spaces and jeopardizes health, especially as the world gets hotter and storms more intense. The New Jersey DEP's 2020 Science Report on Climate Change warns of an increase in potential water moisture damage to buildings and a higher potential for dampness and condensation indoors, creating more ideal environments for mold and bacteria growth.
So I think that kind of thing is going to be happening more and more as we have these, catastrophic flooding events. So I think, clearly this is a climate issue.
I remain convinced that fungi can make people sick.
Rutgers researcher Joan Bennett sampled molds that grew in homes down the shore after Superstorm Sandy. She also predicts a looming health crisis and notes while not everyone reacts badly to mold, it can cause severe illness. And here in New Jersey, 600,000 adults and 167,000 kids already suffer from asthma.
With climate change and the number of really devastating storms going up, we're going to be seeing more and more flooding, more and more mold growth, and more people getting sick.
Mold remediation remains costly. Government aid can be glacially slow in coming and even harder to get for tenants who must depend on landlords to clean up mold. Bennett says resulting health issues are not always diagnosed as a mold problem.
It's often called thick building syndrome or damp building syndrome, and there are many people who feel that they have been made sick and have respiratory issues and brain fog and fatigue by living in moldy houses.
Is it more risky for me to not have a home, or is it more risky for me to live in this that has a potential health risk?
Van Dyke recommends families with scant resources pick one room for vulnerable family members and make it as safe as possible, especially with good ventilation. Geibel's parents helped pay the $6,000 it cost to remediate her home. Dionio's dad, meanwhile, is out of the hospital. Her home's mold-free for now, but she obsessively monitors every storm forecast.
I have fear.
Yet another worry in a warming world. I'm Brenda Flanagan, NJ Spotlight News.
After historic flooding wreaked havoc on hundreds of homes in South Florida, many are now facing a slew of long-term issues.
And one of those issues is potentially deadly. CBS News Miami's Joan Murray joins us now with how mold is going to be a big concern.
Inside the house, it's up to see, up to here.
It took 4 days for the water to subside before the Figueroas could get back into their Edgewood home after that historic flood event in Fort Lauderdale, April 12th.
It is a big hit for us.
And then there's mold that has to be cleaned up. Andrea Figueroa said she sees it and smells it. So does her husband, who's undergoing cancer treatment. What makes you know there's mold?
Because there's dampness in the air.
That mold can make you sick.
Mold is indiscriminate in its affecting patients.
People with asthma or COPD need to be especially careful around mold, says Broward Health Chief Medical Officer Dr. Joshua Ledges.
Bleach and water mixture is probably best to take care of mold.
Consider wearing a mask and gloves if you are trying to remove mold.
After water is there for 24, 48 hours, mold can certainly begin to set in, and that can affect people's respiration. Symptoms that we usually hear about or see are wheezing, difficulty breathing, some chest tightness, runny or stuffy nose, itchy, watery eyes, puffy eyes. These would be indicators that you've probably been exposed to mold.
The Figueroas are staying in a hotel, trying to limit their mold exposure.
We're cleaning up the place, and still a lot of things to be taken care of.
That includes staying healthy while beating back the mold and trying to restore the home they have shared 45 years. Mold, just one of the many problems created by all that flooding. You can see the cleanup goes on here in Edgewood, that neighborhood just north of the airport. Many people like the Figueroas have no flood insurance, so they and others have to come up with the money to fix all that mold problem and also to fix their property. In Fort Lauderdale, Joan Murray, CBS News, Miami.
In Dothan, black mold in a large hole in the roof from Hurricane Michael one resident says has left her living in poor health and safety conditions. Our Tiffany McGrath joins us live tonight with more on this story. Tiffany, good evening. That's a problem today, too, because of all this rain.
Right. Yes, Ben, it is. Dothan resident Sandra Mills says her landlord refuses to correct the issues in her home, filled with mold and a gaping hole that allows rainwater to pass through. She says the problems continue to make her ill.
Here is the mold that fell.
Dothan resident Sandra Mills says she's been living with black mold throughout her house for months, as well as many other problems that the landlord will not fix.
I have black mold in my body. The landlord does not fix things, and if he does, they fix it halfway.
And after a tree fell on her home during Hurricane Michael, she said the problems just got worse inside the home.
The birds, the squirrels, the rain, the tarp has been up, but it's halfway done.
So right now I'm here in Miss Sandra's house where the tree fell in her living room. You can see the damage where the tree created. This is what the landlord has not fixed. Rain continues to come in, and then we're going to take a look right here out the front door, and you can see two trees.
According to the law and the warranty of habitability, a landlord has to provide a place that's habitable.
Are there 4 walls? In Alabama, is there air conditioning? Is there mold? Are there leaks in the ceiling? Anything that poses a threat to the health and safety of the tenant.
But Garden Estates and Coggins, the landlord responsible for the property, says they do just that.
No, it's not livable, and Tommy told her it was not livable.
She said that there's been mold in the house prior to...
There was no mold in the house prior to this.
But Ms. Mills says that's not the case, and if it seems like your landlord isn't providing a safe place...
Document well exactly what the condition is that the property is in by taking photos, taking notes.
This is physical, mental anguish. And I don't want it to happen to anyone.
Now, Ms. Mills has not yet filed a formal complaint against her landlord, but she says she's in the process of doing so.
All right, Tiffany McGrath, thanks for that update tonight.
Well, it's been over a year, can you believe it, since Hurricane Ida slammed into our region. And while there's been tremendous progress toward our recovery, there are still many people who are displaced or living in damaged homes.
Erica Ferrando was in La Place today, where one man is hoping for a FEMA trailer soon, 1 year later.
I know, and most families in St. John the Baptist Parish at least have safe shelter by now. Roofs have been replaced and some are in FEMA trailers as they wait for their homes to be repaired. But even a year later, there are still people waiting for help.
Come on in a minute.
As you walk through Alonzo Lemoyne's La Place home,
it's a mess.
The mess appears to be only a small problem when compared to this.
I got it in both bathrooms. It's growing fast. I can't get on a ladder no more.
Throughout the home,
when it rains, it comes in through here.
Mold is spreading.
We got mold in here.
That's why he started gutting it.
Here, too. It was leaking. I tore it out.
Lemoyne, who is on disability and food stamps because he suffers from heart trouble, diabetes, hearing loss, and partial blindness.
I had 3 heart attacks not too long ago.
Was home with his mom and sister when Hurricane Ida hit.
No, I was home with the storm. I was doing some praying. The roof was moving. Everything was moving. I was doing some tall praying. I didn't sleep at all.
Sleeping isn't any easier now.
I need help bad, baby, and I can't hardly walk.
Lemoyne's mother is no longer here to help. She was sick and hospitalized 9 months ago.
One day I called, she wouldn't pick up the phone. And I'll get a phone call at night, she passed.
And his sister.
I found my sister dead in the bathroom.
He believes died of a heart attack.
She was grieving for my mama.
The losses.
Move, that's antique.
Left Lemoyne with a storm-damaged home to take care of.
See, I pulled all that out. I'm trying to keep the mold out here so I could breathe good.
He doesn't have insurance to help.
My mama couldn't afford it.
So now, more than a year since Ida, he says he is on the list for a FEMA trailer to stay in, waiting, hoping for help.
And keep praying. That's it. That's all I could do.
Now, a FEMA spokesperson says they have housed 325 families in St. John. There are still 14 pending, and they don't have a time estimate on when more trailers will be distributed.